So good morning again, and I extend a particular welcome to all of you who are gathered here and to the Christians in our midst, and I extend an equal welcome to all of those who are streaming with us this morning. I'm dumbfounded by who it is that streams with us, and so we extend a particular welcome this morning to all of our Jewish friends who are celebrating Passover, and all of our Muslim friends who are celebrating Ramadan. It only happens once every 33 years that these holy days come for these three Abrahamic religious traditions. And I extend a welcome to our friends who are Hindu and a welcome to our friends who are atheists and agnostics. And I bet there's no nuns following us, that's N-U-N-S, but I would welcome them too, and I certainly do welcome the nuns, that is N-O-N-E-S, those who, when the Pew Research poll comes by and it says, what is your religious tradition? And they check off none. That is a significant portion of the country we live in. That's 23% of the country we live in. We welcome everybody here, those of us physically present and those virtually present, because we are all human beings. And it seems to me that the sooner that we realize we are all human beings, the better our world is going to be. Today we come together to celebrate the resurrection. Father Justin just read the story of the early dawn of the resurrection. And the resurrection is for everybody. The resurrection is for all human beings. If Jesus is not for everybody, Jesus is not for anybody, and because Jesus is for God and God is for all of us. So as you heard here, it says that we're told that the resurrection occurred early on the first day of the week. And as you may know, the Hebrew people of Jesus' day, they numbered their days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they did not name them as we do. And so the first day of the week is Sunday. Now, if you think about it, this is actually mind-blowing. We are here because of something that happened on the first day of the week a very, very long time ago. My arithmetic goes like this. If we date Jesus' death and resurrection at the year 33, and we're in the year 2022, little subtraction gets us to 1,989 years times 52 Sundays. That equals 100,428, which is to say we are gathered here approximately 103,428 Sundays after the resurrection. And we're still talking about it. It's hard to overstate the impact of this event. In fact, it's not easy to come up with another single event that has had a greater impact on the world than the resurrection of Jesus. Without the resurrection of Jesus, we would not be here, physically or virtually. There would be no followers of Jesus. And the number of followers of Jesus right now is between 32 and 33% of the world's population. Without the resurrection, the story of Jesus would have ended roughly 103,428 Fridays ago after Jesus died. He was rushed and put into the tomb. They rolled the stone in front of the tomb. His disciples scattered. Game over. End of story. We would never have heard of this guy. But something happened. Common people, and the disciples, super common people, right? Common people experienced Jesus as alive in a new way, in a way that they experienced the fullness of God. And this aliveness of Christ, this aliveness of Jesus, set off a ripple effect through time that had an extraordinary impact, not just on the followers of Jesus, not to over-enumerate here, but I mean, Jesus shows up 187 times in the Quran, and The nuns, the N-O-N-E-S, the people of our country with no religious tradition, have very recently been polled, and their response to Jesus is extraordinarily high and positive. And yet, for those of us who are followers of Jesus, there is more. So we would say the resurrection impacted not only the history of humanity, but the cosmos and the kingdom of God. But maybe that's actually not the big deal. I mean, maybe the big deal is not the cosmos and the kingdom of God, but that the resurrection affects common people like us. It just affects countless throngs of people throughout the world have the conviction that Christ is alive. And that conviction changes everything, And yet, for all of this, if you think about it, this singular event, it's amazing that it remains a mystery for us, right? And so, for instance, the resurrection was an incredible affront to the Hebrew people of Jesus' day. Some portion of the Jewish people of Jesus' day believed that at the end of time there would be this group resurrection. But there was no belief that in time one guy would be resurrected. There was none of that. And we know that Jesus spoke about it, but nobody understood what the heck he was talking about. And we can see the vehemence that some of the people felt around this with our so-called own St. Paul, who was dispatching himself to go to Damascus to bring back people of the resurrection and to kill them. That is, of course, until the risen Jesus appeared to him, and that changed everything. So the same is true for us at some level, right? The resurrection is an affront to anybody who went to elementary school. It is an affront to anybody who grew up with the scientific method, and it is an affront to the cultural conditioning in the world that we live in. The gospel this morning that Justin just read is a gospel that is about dawn, and it's about dawning. It takes place at dawn. It dawns on the disciples that Jesus is alive, and the light of Christ, the Jesus energy, dawns on the world in a new way with the resurrection. And we're told at the beginning that it was still dark when Mary came to the tomb. So I woke up this morning at 4:40 in the morning, and when I woke up, I was just wide awake. And I thought, oh, I know what to do. I am going to pray. I'm going to go with Mary to the tomb while it is still dark. And I have this way that I pray in bed, so I got up and I fold over, and then I thought, I better check my phone because I don't want to be late for the 7 o'clock service. Maybe I've got my time all wrong. And I looked at my phone, and I didn't have my glasses on, which means I can hardly see. It's amazing how fuzzy you people have just gotten. And my phone, I looked at it, and it said, "Hallo." It said hello in German. And then I put my glasses on. And I took my phone, and I started swiping every which way I could swipe. And one of those swipes resulted in the message, "You have a new operating system." That's how I reacted. I started laughing. Who would have guessed it? I got a new operating system. And then it occurred to me, well, I don't need to go with Mary to the tomb because that's what Mary got. She got a new operating system, and so did Peter and John. And what the story is the story of the downloading of the new operating system into these three disciples. Now, as I said, we're told that the resurrection begins in darkness. And it begins in dark, I mean, it's before dawn, but it also begins in the darkness of death and the degradation of humanity and destruction. Just think back to the last 3 days that we've been living out here at the church. And so when Mary gets to the tomb in this darkness, it's that liminal time, that time just before dawn. And it's a really sweet time. It's like being up before the day. St. John of the Cross, in his poem, The Dark Night of the Soul, calls this O dark, more lovely than the dawn. This is the dark it is better than the dawn. And it is a beautiful thing. But not for Mary, right? So Mary is full of grief when she heads to the grave. And we can all feel Mary's shock when she saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So this is shock upon grief. And we're told, so she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Mary thinks the body's been stolen, and it is the most plausible, if not the only plausible explanation. It's not yet dawn, and nothing is yet to dawn on Mary. And then we get the story of the dawning on Peter and John. And this story is the story of the three saws. Now, the three saws are not three saws like, I'm going to cut through something. This is three saws like to see in the past tense. These are three ways of using the word saw. So in the translation that we just read, you heard the word saw and seen a lot. But these are actually different Greek words. And if we go back to the Greek words, what we see is this arc. We see this progression in the use of the words where there is a dawning of understanding. It's almost like the sun is shining on the Son of God. We move from physical sight to spiritual insight. That's what's happening in the story. So the story says, then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. Justin and Elizabeth know that that's the topic of next year's sermon because I'm still hurting that Peter didn't get there first. But anyway, that's another topic. It then says, he, that is John, bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. So this is the first saw. And in other words, this grave is a limestone cave, and it has about a 3-foot opening, and so you really have to bend down to look in this thing. And John bends down and he looks in this thing, and he looks to see what happened. In other words, he sees with his eyes, he sees the burial garments lying without a body. And then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. This is the second saw. The first one was blepo. Now we're in to theoreo. And this is, we all know about this word. So this is to look at something intently, to mentally consider it. You're observing it. You're thinking about it. This is where we get theory and theorize from. We're looking for an explanation. This is super rational thinking. And in John's gospel, when they use this word, it means that there's a certain amount of understanding, but it's not full spiritual understanding. There's no real faith component in it. The people who see this in John's gospel, these people all agree, they all accept Jesus as a wonder worker. He's a marvelous wonder worker. He's a marvelous man, but it doesn't constitute full faith in the way that it is understood either in the Bible or in our community. So you can actually almost kind of hear Peter. So Peter's older than John. We're going to assume that. And he comes huffing and puffing up, and he bends down and looks in the tomb. And since Peter is Peter, he plunges right into the tomb. It's dark. This is a dark place. And you can almost hear him thinking like, what's going on here? Because there are some strange details. It says the wrappings lying there. In the Greek, that has the wrappings lying there in a way as though your body in bed sleeps kind of on its side. And it's, you had your bedding all smushed up and then you kind of like slid out of your bedding this way, but you could see how you were lying in your bed. And he's looking at the wrapping that goes around the head, all neatly rolled up and put in a different place. And perhaps even considering why it was, if you were going to steal a body, you wouldn't keep it wrapped up, because carrying a dead body is very difficult. And also, there were 100 pounds of very valuable spices on the body. We're told that in John's Gospel. And they left the valuable things. So why would you have a grave robber without the, didn't take the spices? That's what stealing grave stuff is all about. Well, then we hear, then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went, and he saw and believed. So now John crouches down, he climbs in there, and we get the Greek word saw, horeo, which means, and I love this, to pierce with intelligent comprehension. Right? So this is sight accompanied by understanding. This is perception. This is intuitive intelligence. This is spiritual insight. And when this is used along with the verb, the horeo and ideen are used together, it means that you're seeing with the spiritual insight, the depth of that leads to believing. So John gets in the empty tomb, he sees the collapsed wrappings, and he sees and he believes. And then there's this colon. One of the things, if the podcast that I make with my two brilliant colleagues, and they are that, pointed out in the one recently about Easter, which is the Bible can collapse things. And so a colon, a lot of things can happen on the other side of a colon. He saw and believed, for as yet he did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. So what this is saying is he has faith. We would use the word faith. In the gospel they use the word believe, that Jesus is raised but doesn't fully understand it. So in other words, there's a whole understanding component that's not taking place, and he doesn't have the whole picture. Then it says, then the disciples returned to their homes. Now we come to the second Mary portion of the story, and we on Mary. And this, once again, is the story of the three saws. First time Mary got there in the darkness, it says she saw like I see when I put my glasses on, physical sight. And then it goes on to say, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. So this is theoreo, that's the second saw, and she looks upon, this is the one where Peter looked upon the wrappings. And now, she must be thinking a lot about Jesus, because she is not impressed by two angels. Super not impressed, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you walked into a cave and you saw two angels, you'd probably be kind of impressed, right? Not Mary, she's not impressed. And so the angels say to her, woman, why are you weeping? Which is their way of saying, lady, you shouldn't be weeping. That's what the question means, because it's not a question. But she doesn't even honor the question. She's stuck in her thinking. She wants Jesus' body. And so she says to them, they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. Still thinks Jesus' body is stolen. It's now daylight for sure, but there's no dawning on her. And when she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but did not know that it was Jesus. We're still in the second saw. This is thoughtful thinking. And whatever she was seeing, it didn't give her the ability to understand that she was talking to Jesus. Now, there is no doubt that Jesus' body is different. He is not resuscitated. This is not like Lazarus, who's been in the grave for 3 days and comes out and everyone goes, oh wow, there's Lazarus. He's been dead for 3 days. He looks like Lazarus and he smells terrible. That's not what's happening here. Jesus' body is transformed and is transforming. This physical, spiritual body we also talked about on the podcast a bit. This is a mystery about what's happening in his body. And then Jesus gives her the second time, woman, why are you weeping? Mary is super not interested in this question. She is not interested in this question. It's not about her. So then Jesus tries another one. Whom are you looking for? She doesn't really answer that. She does not. And then it says, supposing him to be the gardener, which, if you think about it, is probably the greatest case of mistaken identity of all time. And she said to him, sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. So Mary's adrenaline is flowing, no doubt. She is fired up. And I have no doubt, no matter her size or no matter the size of Jesus, that she was super strong at this moment and she could lift his dead body, which, as I said, lifting a dead body is very, very heavy and awkward. But it's possible this adrenaline has cut off her mental reasoning a little bit. And then Jesus said to her, Mary. Okay, so if you look really closely, it says Mary, exclamation point, which I think the translation should say, stop! Mary, it's me. Right, so Mary's whole way of thinking is, this man who I love, his body's been stolen, I'm going to get it back, and nobody's going to stand in my way. Not the angels, not the gardener, not Peter and John, nobody. I'm going to get this guy. Right, I'm going to find this man. And then when he uses her name, that's dawn. That is the dawning moment. And she turned and said to him in Hebrew, Rabboni, which means teacher. And that also says exclamation point. And this isn't like, oh, Rabbi. I mean, this is like, she is like going to unzip her skin and leap out and land on top of this guy. She is going to jump right out of her skin. She knows Jesus is alive. She sees, she knows, she understands, and she believes, all in hearing her name. And then Jesus says to her, don't hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. I think the real translation is, Mary, don't jump on me, okay? And the other sometimes says, don't cling to me, don't hug me like this. You know, in other words, there's things happening here. There's things happening. I'm ascending to the Father. I mean, you must sound like, what the heck does that mean, right? There's things happening here. You cannot hold on to me. I am not the same. I am different. And then he says to her, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord. And she told them that he had said these things to her. I have seen the Lord is that third construction in the Greek, and it means that seeing has spiritual experience. This is an experience of the soul, mind, body, and soul. That's what this is. She experiences it in the soul. Now, what the New Testament, what this story is bearing witness to is that something very big happened on this day. But the truth is, something continues to happen. And we are like those early disciples in that the resurrection is always dawning on all of us. I mean, we are just like Peter and Mary and John, who see this resurrection in different ways, each in our own way. You know, it would be really interesting if we got into small groups and we said, so what do you think happened? What is the resurrection? What do you think happened? And what does it mean to you? And we're all trying to figure this out. Now, I think that I'm going to give you some paradigms here, and I hope you'll think about yourself while I'm doing it. And you might say, oh, I'm this person or this person or this person, or on some days I'm that person, and sometimes I'm this person, and sometimes I'm this. It can be all over the place. But some of us are like Mary and John when they first look into the tomb, right? There are people of the first saw. They're blepo people. They, on Easter morning, they look at the resurrection, they give it a good look-see, and they're like, yeah, that's cool. They go back to their homes. That's it. Kind of non-committal. Just, yeah, I took a look. And then some of us are theoreo people. We're like Peter when he crawled into the tomb and he looked at the wrappings, or like Mary when she talked to the angels. We're people of the second saw. We think about it. And we got a few rational theories about it that we kind of working out in our mind. But there's a but. And the but is, we're going to say something happened. There's no doubt that Jesus was a super wonder worker, that he was a great teacher and a great guy, but we're just not all the way there with the resurrection. That's a bridge too far, as we say in our current parlance. And then some of us are the third C. We're the Horeoidine people, right? We're like John when he saw the wrappings and he believed in faith, or like Mary when Jesus called her name and she heard it and knew it, right? And these are people who look at the resurrection and experience it mentally with their reasoning faculties, who look at it I'm just doing this, intuition is a thing of our torso, this, and with their intuition, they sense it, and then with spiritual insight, they see, and the resurrection is very, very real to them. And then some of you experience that. And these are people who, like John's gospel, live into the resurrection. They live into it, which is what believe means in John's gospel. And it's foundational to who they are and who they live. And then some of us are like Thomas people who we're going to meet next week. Remember the story? I know you know it. Thomas didn't see, so he didn't believe. Seeing is believing, not seeing, not believing. So many of us are there too. So the truth of it is this. Jesus' resurrection doesn't matter what we think about it. Jesus' resurrection is Jesus' resurrection, and whether or not we assent to it or not, it is what it is. But the character of our lives may depend on how we think about the resurrection. So if you think you're going to die and go right into the ground and be dead and there'll be total blackness, that's really one way to think about it. But if you think that you're going to die and you're going to rise to new life and there's going to be the light of Christ to meet you, well, that's a whole other way to think about death. And if you think, well, Jesus is dead, so all this stuff about, oh, Jesus, find me a parking spot, or, oh, Jesus, help me out, or I experience you alive in my life, that's one thing. But if you think Jesus is dead, you're like, nah, he was something else, but he's dead, right? That's another thing. The resurrection is all about life. I mean, next to birth, can you think of another story that's more about life than the resurrection, right? And John's gospel is sometimes called the gospel of life. And in John's gospel, Jesus says, I am the life and the resurrection. And the life that the resurrection is about, and the life that Jesus is claiming for himself, is eternal life. It's different than natural life because it doesn't end in death. It transcends death. And Christians would say that life it not only is the horizon, but that it infuses backwards into our daily lives. So on Thursday, I was home and I was having a late lunch, and I had Trader Joe's turkey chili on the stove, and I was trying to will that chili to heat very quickly. And so I was standing over the chili, stirring it, and my cell phone rang, and I picked it out of my pocket, and it's somebody I know very well. And she said to me, I listened to the Easter podcast. And I said, really? Dumbfounded, she listened to the Easter podcast. She said, yeah, I was really moved by it. And I said, really? And then she said, I always thought that Good Friday was the moving day. Jesus dies, but not now. It just seems like there's death all around. And I know what she meant. She meant the pandemic. She meant Ukraine. She meant all of her friends who are aging. She meant all of the people who we know in common who are sick. And then she said something like, we're not going to live forever. I know her very well. I knew that's what she was talking about. And she said, now I see that Easter is the really moving day. We all need Easter. There it is. I got the Easter message while I was stirring the turkey chili. We all need Easter. Christians and Jews and Muslims and Hindus and nuns, agnostics and atheists, those who do not believe in the resurrection, those who kind of believe in the resurrection, and those who are all in with the resurrection. We all need the resurrection because we're all human beings. At some level, we're not all that unique. We're all human beings. You know that Motel 6 ad that says, we'll keep the light on for you? That's what the resurrection is. No matter how dismal or dark or whether or not you can stand what's happening around you, the light of Christ is on. The resurrection light is on. And Yogi Berra said, it ain't over till it's over. And what the resurrection says is, it ain't over when it's over. And so maybe that's why we're here 103,428 Sundays after Jesus rose from the dead. It's because it still matters to our lives, because we're all human beings.